going to be discussing about imperialism. Um, closest you may have heard about imperialism is from world history, right? So I'm more thinking more like, see you had like a ship of a bunch of soldiers, right? Like 10,000, maybe less, right? Maybe 1,000, um, maybe with some sophisticated weaponry, right? Like cannons. Now, most people in the modern age could never imagine themselves in this situation, you know. And the best way to really explain this concept is simply, um, there's really no way to explain it other than uh, certain. It's more like this, because like um, I suppose that there's some audience members who haven't completed high school yet. The better analogy was, why did you make friends with this person? Or if you're in a group, why did you join this group, not the other group, right? Um, there's a lot of decisions that you can make, right? Um, some ways of explaining the decision making are far more isolated than others. In my opinion, um, extroverted sensing psychology is more likely to employ these isolated examples. Um, I'm trying to put a description. Apologize for that. One of these examples are, just remember, but how come the non-extroverts, the introverted sensors, they prefer examples such as, um, for example, if you were taking a public speaking class, you would be physically at red, you would be physically at a certain part of campus delivering a speech, and that would be an isolated example is if we would do that in a classroom, right? As opposed to outside in the, you know, the so um I didn't want to I don't want to elaborate further on this. So in terms of using psychology examples, so it's basically the imperialist soul, I call it. Though I'm sure there's probably a better synonym or graphic source, and you may disagree with my wording. Um, the imperialist soul tends to thrive um, in certain places over others, and I prefer to explain this abstractly before I move to concrete examples later in the video. Um, because like we all know that the Native Americans are not imperialist souls. You know, we can see them being killed with the Trail of Tears and all this. So we clearly saw that the Spaniards and the American um, colonies basically wiped out the Native Americans. So the imperialist soul is described as I mean, these Native American societies are not that primitive. They have prisons, right? So the imperialist soul probably went to prison in the past life. They were they were in these Native American prisons, and they reincarnate, right? And then now they reincarnate in an imperialist society, right? Um, so what is an imperialist society? The United States is one of them. Perhaps England, Spain, would Spain and England count? Because they are technically. Just a years ago, they had all these ships. Yeah, um. All right, wait a minute. Why did I just move to a completely different topic? What I should have done? Apologize. So, what do I mean by past lives? Because a lot of people have this belief where you know they have only one life and they're dead. They go to a permanent place called heaven, right? So other religions they believe in a middle ground. So why did I just throw in religious belief? I apologize for that. That's something I should have at least provide a disclaimer. Um, like sometimes you forget. Sometimes it's just like the thing with religion is that different people have different beliefs. I can't just post my beliefs on anyone here. However, that is an interesting topic. I could make another video on later. Um, but the imperialist soul is something that um they tend to I would say they're better at using technology. That's not the correct description. But the imperialist soul, they tend to let's just say if they were to reincarnate, um, they have to be careful not to reincarnate in certain places. So, because much of Asia, much of Europe are very advanced societies with all this technology. Very advanced. Have basically caught up to the modern age with technology. And I suppose there are some cases where maybe certain communities may have neglected to, for example, rebuild like a several hundred-year-old building or something like that. So there are some isolated cases like that, um, regardless of what first world country you live in. Um, the imperialist soul definitely got arrested in a time period. Now, there's a difference between an imperialist soul and someone that, cause there's a word that's called a racist, or racism, that I think there are many disagreements on the definition of this word. Um, the way they look, and it's like, now obviously, this is only one example, right? As opposed to having a bunch of different examples. So, from the example that you just saw a minute ago, or half a minute ago, um, it's for someone who, um, a racist is not described as someone who has a position in power. It's just the way they look, but it's not really that. It's just it's their ideals. It's their aspirations, their ideals, what they would do if they had power. It's all what if, right? It's um, not of anything objective. We all know that a police officer has far more, um, you know, ability to they can ruin someone's life by arresting them. And it just happens that a police officer. We all know that statistically a lot of black people are arrested, and it's like, but that's not the definition of racism. That is not the definition of racism. Um, what people are describing is the opposite. Is because basically they're just being politically correct. What does that mean? It means that is they're saying this and comparing this to the word racist in a way that makes them politically. Basically, they're not being authentic. They're not trying to understand anything. They're just saying. They're just making that claim when it is most convenient. Um, so let's go back to this picture. Clearly, this man is probably someone who he's not a corporate yes man. You could just tell by the way he looks. He's not a corporate yes man. He actually might just be like someone in a lower class, probably even in poverty. But again, let's say he's like upper class. Let's say he's middle class, right? He's not someone who's particularly looks threatening. He might even be a doctor. He might be a. How do you know, right? How do you know what type of person it is? I don't have any other information, right? So, but basically, um, you know, um, like, oh man, I really should not extend this video.